G'day, folks, and welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Marty Leon, a visionary leader who has shaped the worldwide practice of interventional medicine. In this episode, we'll go a little further into his later career and future aspirations. Please join me. So in 1990, 30 plus years ago, you founded Cardiovascular Research Foundation. What was your vision? And again, for that initially, how have you seen it evolve over time?
Yeah, that for me was a labor of love and still is. I will tell people I try to spend pretty much all day Wednesday when I can at CRF, and it's the most exciting day of the week for me always. But the concept was that it was an opportunity to take the experiences I had at the NIH and to translate them into a working model that could be extrapolated to the outside world. We founded a clinical practice and we developed a private but not-for-profit research foundation that would allow us to be able to explore new ideas, develop preclinical research models, and then to study these new ideas in patients, and then to educate the physician public on how to best use these new therapies. And that cycle, that therapy development cycle, became so important to me that we really built the structure of an organization around it, and tried to develop the highest quality we could for preclinical facilities, a clinical research organization, and then an educational capability that really became the triad or the pillars of what CRF was and still is. So the original notion that really underlied the formation of CRF has persisted now for 30 plus years. Hasn't really changed. I mean, it's obviously evolved to modern times, but it's still the same concept, that to have those 3 domains and to really preach excellence and world-class capability, make it global, make it very multidisciplinary, highly collaborative, that those themes, I think, are still part of CRF. And we're very fortunate. Our current CEO, Juan Granada, has taken it to even further levels. And it's just a pleasure to be part of that and to see it continue to evolve.
Yeah, he's a driven one. He's definitely driven as well. So you've been national PI for many revolutionary clinical trials, Sirius, Endeavor, and the Partner trial, to name just a few. What was that experience like, to be right at the focal point of that change?
I don't think there's anything more exciting than to unblind the data in an important, pivotal, randomized clinical trial that's going to potentially define a new therapy. I remember the first Partner trial. Now, remember, that's something I took from concept. I mean, Alain Cribier and I was one of the founding members of the original technology that was ultimately transitioned to Edwards. So, we went from clinical need to concept to prototype device development to 100 sheep in Paris to the first clinical case in 2002. And then for me to help lead the clinical trials was a very special experience. The first clinical trial that we unblinded, Craig Smith, who was my co-PI, we flew to London. When we saw the data for the first time, it was one of the more profound experiences in our lives. When we saw an absolute difference in mortality of 20% at a year, which meant that if we treated 5 patients, we saved a life. And the only previous cardiac therapy that had been close to that had been heart transplantation. So that to me was a very profound experience. And Stuart Pocock, who is the key person who unblinded the data with us, I think me seeing his reaction was equally profound. So it's a special experience to be part of the clinical trial process. And, I've treated it very seriously and have tried hard to participate. And there are many great clinical trialists now. And I think that we've taken evidence-based medicine and interventional cardiology in such a way that much of what we do in clinical practice is driven by good evidence. And I'm very proud of that and being part of that.
I think we'd love to see that across more disciplines within medicine. I'm just interested if you truly understand the impact you've had on this industry. Do you know inside, or are you too humble to acknowledge it?
I'm a fairly driven person, and I'm very impact motivated, and I don't think too much about that. I've been very fortunate to have had a lot of people say a lot of nice things, but there's no way that anybody's going to change the way I feel and think. And I'm always looking over my shoulder. I'm always thinking about my performance doesn't really, is not related to what I've done, but really what I'm doing and what I can be doing in the future. So it's really nice that people say that I've had an important impact and that I've done, things that have been significant. And I sincerely appreciate that. And I don't take it for granted at all. But it doesn't change the way I operate. It doesn't change the way I think. You see me, I'm still, getting up at 5 a.m. and, working until I'm exhausted. It doesn't change my work ethic or my thinking about what we need to be doing. And I hope that, that persists. I hope maybe there'll be a time when I can reflect and feel some sense of satisfaction and pride about some of the things that we've done. But there's so much more to be doing that if I stop and think about that, then I kind of lose my momentum.
I feel like I'm crazy busy, but looking at what's on your plate, how do you survive? How do you do it? What's your secret? Because I know I can send you emails at 12 o'clock at night, 3 a.m. your time, and I'm going to get a response. What's up with that? I'm fortunate. I've inherited good genes, mainly from my mother, who was really a workaholic. And I'm an early riser. I think the morning hours are some of my most productive hours. I believe strongly in work ethic. I think that you can delegate only so much, and being hands-on is important. And I love to multitask. I love parallel processing. I love having multiple balls up in the air. I'm not a serial person who just sequences. I love to think at many different levels at the same time. And that keeps me fresh and very excited because, frankly, not every project is going to succeed. And by having multiple balls up in the air, I feel like I can be more impactful. So I think all of those things feed into it. And I enjoy what I do. As you can tell, I'm very emotion and passion driven. And if the projects are important, they immediately assume a high priority, and I find a way to make time. You've got to be smart enough to be able to delegate your time. You've got to be, reasonable about what your bandwidth is. And, I don't have quite the energy level that perhaps I had a decade or two ago. But I still have the fire in my gut that I want to be impactful. And the only way to do that is to do what I do best and do it at a high level, and to force myself to continue to be creative. You've worked with some influential, remarkable, and colorful docs, guys like Eberhard Grube, Patrick Sorois, Antonio Colombo. Got any stories you can tell?
Oh, I've had some great experiences. One of the nice things about the interventional community is the camaraderie. So I've been very fortunate to have, friends around the world that have impacted me and that hopefully I've influenced in positive ways. And those friendships are special. So people like Antonio Colombo, during the difficult days when we really didn't understand that stents could actually work, being able to communicate with him as he was doing some bold new clinical research projects was for me very special because it set the field forward. In the earliest days of TAVR, being able to work with Eberhard Grube and share some of the positive and negative experiences. And Eberhard is always somebody who enjoys a good time and enjoys his social outlets. So, being able to socialize with someone like that has been very meaningful. But there are so many people around the United States and certainly around the globe that I feel strongly about that, too numerous to mention. I will mention Alain Cribier because he was a key person in the development of the transcatheter valve therapy, and his persistence was striking, and his boldness. In retrospect, having done that first case that was done almost now 20 years ago, was really a very pioneering effort, and to have been part of that, and to experience the way and the thought that went into that has been very special. And now, about to celebrate 20 years of transcatheter valve therapies, there have been over 1 million patients that have been treated with this technology. So, that's exciting. And it really derives back to some of the charismatic people. But that's the whole field. That's what Grunzig was, and that's what John Simpson has been, and that's what Jeff Hartzler was. And that's so many of the characters who became very charismatic individuals. It took that pioneering spirit to really bring things forward. So to be exposed to those influences have really shaped my career. And I've just been so fortunate to have many of those people as my friends.
Thank you. So you performed over 10,000 interventional procedures. You've authored, co-authored over 2,000 publications. As I've said, you've influenced the evolution of cardiology. Not both, but as a physician, as a clinical trialist, a key opinion leader, and an advisor for companies large and small. What are you most proud of?
It's a good question, Andrew. It's the totality of the experience of just, it's being in the arena. It's being a participant. It's, it's what Teddy Roosevelt said, boldly in that, brilliant piece that he wrote. It's about daring greatly to want to be a participant. I'm proud that I've been in the arena, and I've suffered some of the blows. I've had failures and I've had successes, but at least I've allowed myself to experience the emotion of both and to learn from each, and to continue to persevere. So I think that I'm proud that I was part of the process, and continue to be, hopefully, in a meaningful way, so that I can have an impact.
In researching this conversation, I read a quote from you. Although everyone expects the outcome to be optimal and favorable, sometimes it is not. Having to deal with a negative outcome and interacting with colleagues, families, and referring doctors under these circumstances are some of the hardest lessons to learn in medicine. Many people say that you should have a thick skin for difficult and stressful situations. I feel the opposite. I think people should allow themselves to feel emotionally about some of those failures, integrate that into their thinking, and never lose their humanity and sensitivity towards a poor clinical outcome. I know we touched on this briefly right at the beginning, but can you expand upon that? Do you remember that quote?
Yeah, I do. I can't recall exactly what the context was, but I can imagine myself saying that, because it is one of the experiences that I've certainly had. There are advantages being a clinician, because not every outcome is a positive outcome. If you work in a cath lab and you work with extremely ill patients, as we commonly do, we're not going to always have good outcomes. Everybody thinks about the TAVR revolution. Nobody talks to the fact that of the first 5 patients we treated in the United States, 2 of them died and the other 3 didn't, live very long after the initial procedures. And there were a lot of lessons to learn. And the way we approach that and confront our failures, either in a more traditional clinical sense or in an early research sense, I think defines you as a person and as a physician. And I've taken those experiences very seriously. And it's also shaped my thinking in terms of how you design clinical trials and how you manage certain complications. And I mean, one of the first things we did when we developed a clinical platform for a TAVR and started to study it is that we developed an independent publications office. And I have to credit Edwards for allowing us to do that. And we focused not on the good things. In fact, I wouldn't let them publish anything that was good without confronting some of the issues. I mean, we had strokes, we had vascular complications, we had bleeding complications, we had paravalvular leak, we had conduction abnormalities. And if you look, all the original manuscripts focused on all of those things. So to really confront some of the negative aspects of some of the work we do and to constructively and iteratively improve those, I think is part of defining what a a clinical research and a device development effort should be. So I believe that failure is instructive, and it can drive you to greater success. And that could be in a one-on-one interaction with this individual patient and family, and it could be in the context of a clinical trial as well.
So what is a lesson that you'd like to pass on, to young folks just starting their career?
There are several. I think that there's no way to shortcut the experience. You've got to pay your dues, which is to say you really have to spend the time to be able to gain experience, to be excellent at what you do. So I think that attitude and to appreciate that experience does matter, and that you're in a constant learning environment. I think that's one thing. A second is to develop themes and to go deep, not to be superficial. A mile wide and an inch deep is not going to get you anywhere these days. You really have to be able to really understand things, and that may require extra training or extra time or being experienced with other people. Third thing is people settle too easily into a comfort zone. And once you do that, you tend to flatten out your career. You've got to continue to challenge yourself, and you've got to force yourself to get out of your comfort zone. And that's not easy. But that allows you to be able to grow. And I think that's very important. And I think the commitment to excellence and to want to have an impact, to be able to maintain the focus that we're still dealing with a field that allows us to impact patients is critical. So the patient at the end of this cycle needs to always be considered. So those are some of the lessons that I've learned that I think are well suited to any young person in being successful in this career.
Yeah. Mentoring something that's very important to us at Fogarty. It seems very important to you. Yeah. What do you think about mentoring, and what's your style?
It's another great question. I'm again very fortunate that I've been in a position to be able to have experiences with many people. I'll tell you an anecdote. Again, middle-class Jewish upbringing. Israel was really an important thing in our lives. But my mother once told me before she died that when you go to Israel, you should not go as a visitor. You should go and do something that contributes to the country in a positive way. That's a fairly profound statement when you're young in your career. And then she died. And I said, well, what do I do? And then when I was at the NIH in the late 1980s, I had an opportunity because we were involved in some of in the first bare metal stent project. So I packed up my bags with one of my colleagues, Yaron Almagor, and we went to Israel. And we went from hospital to hospital to teach the Israeli physicians how to put coronary stents in. And that was an extraordinarily powerful experience for me to be able to do that and to make that contribution. And in doing that, I began to train Israeli physicians and had Israeli fellows, at least 1, 2, or 3 every year for more than 20 years. Now, about 2/3 of the cath lab directors in the country of Israel are my former fellows, as well as about half of the chiefs of cardiology. So it really helped me to understand the power of mentoring in terms of how you can extend your influence by having the commitment to younger physicians and their training. And I continue to do that in as many ways as I possibly can. I really believe that the early career faculty and fellows are the people that we should be focusing our attention to.
I think I've just worked out something about you. And I think it is you provide the activation energy for a lot of things. There are a lot of people that talk about things, and that's good. That's where you need to start. But I think just then you provide the energy, or I'll call it the activation energy that gets things moving. And I think I might have just captured something I've been always wondering about. So what do you think?
Well, Mike Mack is a very close friend, and we work together on many projects, and more recently one that we enjoy, which is the heart valve collaboratory. But we think of that as it's either activation energy or to be the catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
To be the inciting element that brings people together and to try to focus things and to try to move things in a positive direction. I don't have to be the leader. I don't have to be the designated person who's given the credit. I need to be, again, in the arena, hoping that I can contribute to trying to get things moving in a positive direction. So that's fun for me, and I enjoy that.
You were recently honored in a partnership by the ACC and CRF through the creation of the Marty Leon Center for Cardiovascular Transformation. I've read the articles. There are 4 pillars of focus. Could you explain why they're important to you?
Well, the ACC was very nice, and I really appreciate that. They gave me an opportunity to be able to, at this stage in my career, to be able to leverage some of my relationships and some of the things that I've learned, and to really give back. This transformation center is meant to address some of the grievances that we experience in our social lives. There's a lot of things that aren't right about medicine, the medical workplace, in terms of being able to have the kind of diversity and respect for a proper medical workplace from the standpoint of gender, race, and other underserved communities. There's a lot of things that are not right about access to care in medicine. Just finished writing a manuscript that we're submitting to the New England Journal of Medicine on race disparities in TAVR. There are a lot of things that aren't right about the way we train physicians and allow physicians to have an opportunity to be able to have advanced skills. We wanted to find ways that we could begin to address some of these things. Many people talk about this, and I hope that we can use the interventional model, which is that interventional means to be active, to be intervening, and to take some of the impatience and some of the driven, execution-oriented approach to be able to deal with some of these social issues that I think certainly can stand to be improved in the next generation. So that's what we're going to be trying to do. And we're still in the very early stages of formalizing how we're going to approach this.
Yeah. And again, it gets back to your activation and bias to getting things done. So the next question. So tell us something that we don't know about Marty Leon, that's not in the public domain, that you haven't said about before. So just anything. That's one thing that gives us a bit more insight.
So the one person I haven't mentioned is my wife. And we've been together for 50 years. And we've been through a lot of tough times and a lot of positive and negative circumstances. A lot of the focus tends to, or the spotlight shines on me, but the reality is that without the partnership and the team that we have had over that half century, I never would have been able to accomplish even a small fraction of what I've done. So many times you forget the people who are most influential in your lives. So I think to me that is the one person that I hadn't mentioned who certainly has helped me to define my career pathway.
Again, thank you. And I don't know if we could finish on a better note than that. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us on MedTech Trailblazers. We hope you enjoyed learning new things about another impact maker in our industry, a man I truly admire. Do join me again for future episodes in our series by subscribing to this podcast. Please also like and share our content with your colleagues. Again, I find that hard to believe I'm saying that, but please do. We want to hear back from you with names of MedTech leaders you believe are trailblazers and whom we should consider having on the show. Until next time, I'll leave you with my usual parting thoughts from Hannibal of Carthage that should resonate with all of us trying to make a difference for patients worldwide. And that is, I will either find a way or make one. Cheers. Thank you.